Hello everybody, welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here with our November 2019 block. And this block is a variation on the honeycomb block, which I'm guessing would be a loose variation.
Loose variation, yes.
So I mean, if you look at it and you go, I don't see a honeycomb.
Right.
You're not the only one. Anyway, so to make this block, it's really not a difficult block.
Right. More traditional.
More traditional, because we're going to give you all your piece sizes. Oh, by the way, please get a copy of the printed instructions to this to refer to when you're actually sewing it. And that is on the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild's website, either in the newsletter for November or on the Block of the Month section of the site.
Right.
All right, so Shelley, let's move these and let's tell them about what fabric they need this month.
Okay. We need a piece of the focus fabric, which is Modern Movement by Henry Glass, and we need a piece of that is one piece that's 3x5. And then we need some more 3x5s, 7 pieces of a gray. And then we need a coordinating fabric, which coordinates with the focus. And we need 4 of those that are 3.5 by 6.5. And then we also need white, 4 of those that are 3.5 by 6.5.
Okay, so after you have your fabric cut out, there's a couple of little extra cuttings that we have to do to make this ready to sew. And the first one of those is your pieces that are 3" by 5", and there's 8 of them total, with 7 gray and 1 of the focus fabric. And we want you to pair them together, right sides together or wrong sides together. It doesn't matter which one, but you have to have them facing.
Right.
And do the cutting in even pairs.
Right.
Okay, don't do them one at a time, because you'll probably get messed up.
Right.
So Shelley's got her gray fabric. She's gonna have me cut it for her. And the reason why we need you to have them facing together is that actually the block requires either side of the mine's turned wrong. It's easier to show this way. Either side of this piece, these 2 pieces are a different cut. Right. It looks the same, but they're actually a different cut. Oh, I'm doing this left-handed, I forgot. And so if you have them facing together, you will get 2 of each of the cuts. Whereas if you do them one at a time, and if you don't switch the angle of your ruler, you would not get that.
Right.
So I'll show you when I stack these up. See these 2 cuts, as you can see, they're different, and that's what we need. And so if you do that, and then after you're done, we suggest you take the pieces and stack them in the matching. Oh, that's hard to see upside down. I did it backwards. Okay, match them so that you have all of each cut in one stack. Okay, so that's the first thing to do, is to take those pieces. Then the second thing, we want you to take your 3.5 by 6.5" fabrics, and this is just an easy way to mark a quarter, the block into quarters, and we do it by ironing it.
So we fold this in half, do a press, fold it again, do another press. Excuse me. And then we end up with 4 sections.
Okay.
But we only really care about the mark.
Okay, so now the next thing that we have to do, so we have this fold that is showing the quarter. And we're going to make a diagonal cut along here from that quarter down to a 1/4 inch up from the bottom. And all right, I'll do that one. I wasn't going to do it live, but I will, especially because it's Shelley's fabric, and if I mess it up. But you know, I just lay it on here, and I use my little thing on this cutting mat, and I can see there's the quarter, and then I'm going right to that fold, which might be hard for you guys to see from there, but I'm up a 1/4 inch from the bottom, I'm at the fold, and then I cut off that corner. I cut off that corner. Let me see if I can get that back on there. I'll owe Shelly a piece of fabric in a minute. Okay, so then you end up with this piece.
Take these off.
And so this is the pieces, the shapes that you need to make these rectangles with the triangles on the edges. Okay, so now the next part is, after you've done all of that and you've cut all of these down, I guess I'll mention, you could lay it out at this point and try to decide how you want to lay out your block, because how you match up the fabrics, whether it's a gray or a focus fabric with any of these, that's up to you.
Right.
And then how you actually arrange these is up to you also. They can be anything. Like we ended up doing it very symmetrical, both of us, but that was just random.
Right.
We weren't around each other when we
Right.
sewed it, and it was kind of funny. We ended up with the same thing. But what we do today is going to be different. So you can do that. You can lay that out, but you don't have to. The way that I think Shelly and I both did this, we just sewed corners on.
Right.
And then after we had all of these 8 sub pieces,
Right.
then we arranged them and decide how we
Right.
want our block to look. So when you're going to lay these, after you cut off those corners and you have this piece, I want you to notice that on this triangle shape, on all the triangles, there's the original side, which is 5 inches long.
Right.
Okay, and then there's the hypotenuse that we made of this triangle.
Ooh,
and
fancy name.
well, I think I know my little geometry. And this side is longer, so this side is going to be 3 inches, 5 inches, and then a longer length. I didn't measure it, but we don't care, because you're going to put the 5-inch length against the corner. And so right here, if I lay that 5-inch length there, I can put that one on this side, but I can't put it on this side. I'd be putting the wrong side. And the reason why is that when we fold it out, it makes it big enough for you to cut the block. If you lay the long side on there when you cut it, you may not have enough fabric. I mean, you may, but I'm just saying I know for sure it works the other way. So lay the 5-inch piece on there, and after you do that, I have one where I've laid them both on there. It should look kind of like this. It should kind of cross pretty good in the middle. If it's just barely touching, then you've laid the long edge against it. If it barely overlaps, you have the wrong edge.
Right.
So this overlaps by like an inch at least.
Do you want to
Not
talk
more.
about where they need to place
Oh,
that?
The
on
other
the
thing,
edge?
the other thing is that because when it folds out after we sew it, you do lose a little bit, and you want to make sure this thing is up high enough. Even though the angle of it will kind of help, just make sure you put your corners when you lay them on there. Put them a little bit above the edge of the bigger piece, so that these are sticking up.
And we recommend sewing from that end, not the pointy end.
Yeah, if you try to sew on the machine, let me show that too. If you try to sew up from this end, you're going to be fighting these tips getting sucked down into your sewing machine. And I even use a straight stitch needle plate, and Shelly never changes her out because she doesn't want to break her needle, but I always use a straight stitch plate, and they still, because they're tiny little ends, they kind of go in there.
Right.
So the trick to get that so you don't have that trouble is to sew with the wider end first, leading.
Right.
Okay, so we are going to sew together all of these pieces.
And then we show
And
the
then we'll
cutting back after we come back?
Yeah, because then they have to be trimmed down. And when you, after you sew them, press these triangles out, away from the center. Otherwise, I think it's too bunchy.
Is that what we did?
I did that on mine. I don't know if. Oh, you know what? I didn't. I did half and half.
I think we did half and half, but
that's
hard to decide what.
Yeah.
Works
So you
best.
could roughly do half and half, and just be prepared when we're sewing the last thing together to adjust some pressing so that it lays.
It all
flatter.
depends on how you lay your things out in the final, what you need. So it's hard to guess. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to sew these pieces together, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the trimming. Okay, so we're back and we have sewn our pieces together, as you can see, and we want to show the trimming to get them down to the right size.
All right, so now we need to trim them back down to 3.5 by 6.5, which is what the original size was of your bigger piece before you cut off the corners. So we're going to line it up with in this direction with the smaller side up. Lay it across the top.
If you have a 6.5 inch wide ruler, that's the best thing to use. So you accidentally don't cut it too narrow.
Right.
But if you don't, you can make do, but the ruler needs to be at least 6.5 inch wide.
That's very true. Yeah, otherwise it'll be hard to get it accurate.
And if you don't have 6.5, then take a bigger ruler and put tape on it. Mark off the 6.5. That's really key.
Right. So the ruler I'm using here is a 6.5 inch ruler. So I lined it at the top here, across the top, and then down at the bottom should be at the 3.5 inch mark. And then
wait, you're over too far.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you want to like center it on
it in what you've sewn together.
And you can, if you haven't pressed them too aggressively, when we ironed those big pieces, there was a press mark at the center, and you can kind of use that. What I did was I took that center mark and I laid it on a line on my cutting mat, and then I used that, so then I kind of knew where the center was.
Right.
But you'll find your way that works best.
It's not super important, just as long as you end up with a 3.5 by 6.5 inch piece. That's the most important part.
Right.
So.
And the thing to watch is that depending on your piece, you're over.
Am I?
Yeah, because there's nothing showing here. There should be a little bit of fabric, or you should be right at the edge. You definitely don't want to cut it so you don't have fabric down there in each of the corners.
So you end up cutting up this side and then across the top.
Yeah, so her first trim is here and here, kind of like when you're doing a square up.
Right.
And then after she has that edge done, here's one that she's actually trimmed.
Yeah,
I've
trimmed this
edge, and so she's going to turn it over.
I've trimmed this side and this side. So then I turn it around, and then I'll trim the other two sides. Line it up again.
Now you just use that other edge, and on the long side,
on the bottom.
Yeah,
line on the bottom and this side.
At 3.5 inches, and then just trim off the extra.
Right.
And you're really just trimming this edge and then these two little tips.
Right.
That should be what it is.
Yeah,
it doesn't have it lined up.
I can't really see.
Okay, so once you have that done, then you've got your 8 pieces of your block. And now is the time when you're going to play with a layout. And basically you want to lay them, you start, and you can do it like in groups of 4 is kind of an easy way to do it.
Right.
And if you, actually the way we laid it out, they look less like a honeycomb than if you do more, this would be the more traditional look of the honeycomb, because this is the shape right here that makes that honeycomb look. But the block at the bottom will have a wide piece at the bottom and the top, and then you'll lay the other two so they match. And you can, however you want to make that layout, that's up to you. I found it easier to sew like all 4 of one side and all 4 of another side, and then I sewed it down the middle in one seam.
Oh, I did it as
or you can do it as four little
that's what I
things,
did.
and then play with how they look.
Right.
And anyway, you're gonna sew them together, and then we're gonna come back and we will show you our finished blocks. Because really you're just sewing these pieces together, making sure that the center, the smaller edge is the part that touches, and the wider edge is on the outer.
Right, and use a scant 1/4 inch.
Yeah, or a very, either a scant or a very accurate 1/4 inch.
Yeah, because we have no, in theory, no trimming.
Yes, there should be no trimming at the end. All right, so we will come back with our finished blocks. All right, so we're back with our finished blocks, and they look great.
Yes.
We both made them look more like honeycombs this time. Now that we actually ourselves understand the block. No,
Yes.
just kidding about that. I did want to mention. I can show you. They are 12.5 inch. Mine's actually a little bit long, but it's 12.5 inch wide. So the one thing I did want to mention that I know two things. Number one, these blocks, if you're turning them into the guild, they're not due till January of 2020.
Right.
So we're kind of lucky. We're giving you some time off on the holidays. The other thing was when I was talking in the beginning on the pressing, and really it doesn't matter because you can always adjust the pressing as you go. But there are a lot of these kind of triangle seams that have to interlock.
Yeah.
And I did figure out the way to press it. When you are pressing one of these subsets, if you line up all of those subset pieces in the same direction, meaning like all the fat edge and the, it's facing the same way, and then you just press, and you press all the seams one way, press them all, like say to the top, then as you are interlocking and moving these around, it ends up working out perfect. You don't have to fix any seams because you're actually matching the opposites or the sames together, which is kind of opposite, so they interlock. Right. And it worked the whole way. And then after I pressed these, then I just watched and I pressed opposite.
Right. Okay.
But pressing's not a big deal.
Right.
Just try to do that so you don't have to move your seams. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else, Shelley?
I think we got it.
All right. So have fun with this block, and we will see you back in December.